Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I first want to just thank our co-chairs for the evening, Gordon Tapper and Dr. Judy Kuryansky, for giving me the opportunity and my mission, the Jamaican Permanent Mission to the UN, to partner with them on this activity this evening. We have, as Gordon said, we have done many things together over the past few years. And I do want to echo the sentiments of Dr. Judy when she looked out. You know, I've chaired many, many meetings in this room. So this is not the first time that I'm having an opportunity to look out from this vantage point. But I do want to echo what Dr. Judy says. When I look out at the diversity that is arrayed in front of me, I know for sure that I'm not in a UN meeting. Because, you know, there are 193 of us, as you have heard, member states. But somehow when we come together to deliberate and to negotiate on matters that impact us all and that we all profess to care about, you know, universal values like love and tolerance and respect, we're negotiating and dialoguing with each other from a set of papers, you know, a common draft text. And somehow, when we are assembled from all corners of the globe, we don't seem to reflect the diversity that we bring to the UN. When I look out at a UN meeting, everybody looks like me, dressed in a suit that has become my uniform from Monday to Friday. And I'm looking at all the different colors and all the different types of cultural diversity that is arrayed. And I'm like, the UN doesn't really look like this. That's one of the laments that I have. It should look like this. But I think only when, on occasions when we have civil society organizations and NGOs invited to the UN, do we actually see the expression of what we purport to advocate for in these halls. So in Jamaican parlance, big up yourself. Thank you very much for that.
He is an extremely popular person. He's an extremely popular spiritual leader. When we put up online that Swami was going to be a part of this panel, we really couldn't even cope with the number of RSVPs that came in, the number of requests that came in. And many of them, surprisingly, many of them came from my community in New Jersey, around Totowa, of which I was very happy about. Anyway, the first speaker is our Swami, please.
Distinguished members on this panel and my dear friends, 125 years ago, in the World Parliament of Religions in Chicago, Swami Vivekananda, speaking about Hinduism, he gave a clarion call for interfaith harmony, interreligious understanding, and an end to fanaticism. That was in 1893, September 11th. Uncanny. It is a fact that no religion ever teaches violence, but it is also a sad fact that throughout history, violence has been committed in the name of religion. Other interests, political interests, and other interests often weaponize religion. And we, as believers, as members of different faiths, as spiritual leaders, we have to be careful that the teachings of our religion, that our religious communities are not in this way weaponized, are not in this way set off against each other. It is very easy to hate. Neurology tells us that we are tribal by nature. And so we have a strong sense of in-group and out-group. And unfortunately, religion sometimes fosters that inherent sense. But religion is meant to do just the opposite. Earlier this evening, Rabbi Cass, when I heard him speak, I thought, there goes my talk. He mentioned Mahatma Gandhi. This year is the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, the great teacher of peace and nonviolence. Speaking about religion, Mahatma Gandhi said, intolerance is in itself a kind of violence. He further said, my religion is truth and nonviolence. Truth is my God, and nonviolence is the way to attain that God. In Hinduism, we find this central teaching that the truth is one, but the wise speak of it differently. Ekam sat vipra bahuda vadanti. One of the oldest scriptures of the world, the Rig Veda, says that the truth is one, the wise speak of it differently. How is it that the same reality, if the truth is one, how can you speak of it differently? Because that reality being infinite, being beyond our human concepts and human language, when we try to express it in human language, then the expressions differ according to time and nationality and culture, and yet we are talking about the same reality. Therefore, we view the religions of the world as different paths to the same reality. They are all valid, they are all true, they are all unique. Indeed, they have to be different because they each has a place in the economy of God. Different paths to the same reality. There is actually no excuse for quarreling. Not just tolerance, but acceptance. Hinduism teaches that not only one must understand and appreciate and revere one's own faith, but also one must understand and accept and respect the faiths of others. Somebody asked me, is it okay to believe that my faith is the best? Actually, it is. And yet you can respect the faiths of all others. There's a cute, very Indian kind of story which explains this. When the wife comes to the in-laws' place, she has a wonderful relationship with her husband and her father-in-law, even mother-in-law, and other in-laws. But her relationship with her husband is special. It is only through her husband that she has relationships with everybody else. In the same way, our relationship to our own faith is special. It has to be special. And yet, it is through that special relationship that we have a wonderful relationship to all other faiths. We are lucky to live in this time when the world has become one village. There's an ancient Indian saying which says, the whole world is a nest. And we are all relatives. We all stay in this nest. The dangers of being together are that it may lead to conflict, but there are so many wonderful advantages to it. Today, for the first time, we can say in the history of humanity, we can lay claim to our common shared heritage, which is the spiritual traditions of the whole world. Islam and Christianity and Judaism and Buddhism and Shintoism and Taoism are as much my heritage as Hinduism is. This is today, it's unique that, and this is the place where we can say it. A few weeks ago, a gentleman was telling me the United Nations is a spiritual place. This is the place where the nations of humanity come together for peace and universal well-being. That is the purpose of religion. You know, there are large numbers of people, young people today, turning away from the organized religions of the world. And they call themselves the nuns. If you ask, which religion do you belong to, Christianity or Islam or Hinduism, they say none. And there are large numbers of such people. It's the fastest growing section among young people today. So a survey was conducted among these young people in the United States, and they were asked, what is it that turns you off religion? You know what's the first thing they said? They said, because they fight among each other. One. Second, it's because they are against the modern values of today. You know, against the values of gender equality, against economic and social equality. That's what turns us off. Sometimes they hold on to old and outmoded value systems which clash with our aspirations today. And third, they said that sometimes they say things which are irrational or against science. But note that it is in the interests, in our own interest, in the interests of organized religions, that we have interfaith harmony. Young people are turning away from organized religion because they perceive organized religions are at odds with each other. Just as religious intolerance leads to violence, lack of justice and perceived lack of justice also leads to violence. There's another thing that I've been asked to speak about. Social injustice, gender injustice, and economic injustice, they all lead to violence. Sri Ramakrishna, a great Hindu teacher, said that there is no religion on an empty stomach. Poverty kills religion, as the Imam said in the last panel. We have today this wonderful opportunity of coming together for interfaith harmony and peace, and to establish justice based on interfaith harmony and peace for the whole world. It is this task that we have in front of us, and I pray to the one reality which is worshipped and approached in all different traditions, that that reality may help us in this great task ahead. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Swami.
The divinity in me greets the divinity in you. For those of you who did not know what that means. So we start all of our services in my home church with Namaste. And so our distinguished good evenings and welcomes and gratitudes all have been spoken. I do not, though, want to not say how deeply grateful I am to our sponsors and co-sponsors and to our co-conveners especially, Mr. Gordon Tapper and Dr. Judy Koryansky, who I will follow anywhere she goes because her energy and light just ruminates everywhere, and I'm grateful for the permanent mission also of Jamaica and of permanent mission of Jamaica to the UN. It is a blessing to finally actually get into one of the programs and events that you all sponsor. All of them all the time are always so packed. It is a blessing to be here. There is a text in the Christian tradition that says, "Beloved, I pray that you may prosper and be that you may prosper in all things and be in good health, even as your soul prospers." And so it's in 3 John, for those Christians that are in there going like this, shaking your heads. I'm grateful that you know what I mean. I'm usually the one that in the World Interfaith Harmony Week, where everybody gathers, and it's a beautiful time because we come from all various traditions and we sit in the same space, and it's a wonderful, blessed time. And I'm always the one who comes in with the hard reality that the life outside of our room doesn't look like this. And sometimes I think we need to be reminded that the reality is that life outside of this room doesn't always look like this. And so the soul of the world is sick. It is unwell because the human soul is too. There are wounds of the spirit that are being ignored and further damaged by humanity's arrogance, greed, or apathy. There are flesh wounds also that continue to be exacerbated by our failure to address the broken systems and faulty structures with true practical methods of implementing sustainable and transformative change. And so the work of building bridges across boundaries, which is really, I love the idea that we can come together and actually say that, because our work, meaning all of us in this room, is not just about building bridges, but being bridges. So it is about being bridges. And when you are a bridge, oftentimes you ignore yourself, your own health, your own well-being and health. And so I want to say to all of you bridges in the room, not to ignore yourselves. It is oftentimes what happens. Building bridges across boundaries and being bridges is a God-sized task, and any God-sized task can never be achieved by one person, by one religious community, one leader, or one nation, but it will take all of humanity as one voice, as one body, and with one mission. To relieve human suffering and work together for the safety and security of all humankind. So the Sustainable Development Goal, of course, that Dr. Judy and I hold so dear, number 3 is the one that I have been tasked to talk about today. I live and breathe and embody SDG number 5 because that is who I am, but it cannot happen, equality among women and even just gender justice, without us being well. And many of us are not well. I am keenly aware of that as a Black woman of Caribbean descent in this Black skin, in this world. I am oftentimes unwell and not healthy, and many of us are. And some of us with brown bodies can speak to that, being unwell with such sure realities. But the targets and the indicators of this goal, number 3, which is to ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. I encourage you to look into it. I encourage you to look at these targets and indicators that are listed and that are hoped to be achieved by 2030, some of which, of course, we know are the reduction of maternal and infant mortality and the ending of epidemics such as AIDS and tuberculosis and malaria and other neglected tropical diseases, etc. My task, of course, today is to just reflect and to show you that the role of interfaith harmony and achieving this well-being and health means that we are keenly aware that we are that bridge. The bridge, of course, that links the governments and holds the governments accountable. I believe, as Shamsi Ali said, Imam said earlier, that we must hold governments accountable, and even at the local levels, we must hold them all accountable to what they have said to keep us whole and well. And well. And I just want to say this is a challenging task as we go forward. If we remember that 11 children die every minute from preventable diseases, when a child's mother is able to read, that child has a 50% more likely chance to live past the age of 5. When over 450 million people are suffering from mental disease of some kind that go undiagnosed and untreated, when there are still 112 schoolgirls that have been abducted almost 5 years ago from Chibok, Nigeria, that are still being held in captivity, and thousands of women and girls are sold into slavery daily, and the vulnerable suffer at the hands of gender-based violence, when there is still no access to good and affordable health care that is not a luxury but a human right, when those realities still exist, we cannot all be well. And so it is our responsibility to envision a human community where the dignity and the sacred worth of every person, especially every woman and girl and the vulnerable, is recognized and participates as valued in our community. It is our work to make sure that those things are our reality in our lifetime, that we have access to education, that we have access to medical care and sexual and reproductive health and rights. These are the rights that we must work towards vehemently so that we can be well. If we are the ones to help ensure that there is a seat at the table for the last, the least, and the left out, those whom we say that we work for, but always exclude in the plans for being well. If we lift the altitude of our thinking, then our attitude will adjust. And this is what I preach and teach all the time, but it means that our whole selves must be well and healthy, that our minds, that our physical health, psychological health, mental health, emotional and communal health must be engaged. We must really, truly engage the ethic of care and compassion for all, so that our well-being of self and of others can be a reality in this work of healing and harmony. And so if what our dear Swami says is true, and what he reminded us of is that this place called the United Nations is a place where the spiritualities of the world come together, then dare I say that it is for the purpose of the healing of the nations. It is for the purpose that we must not forget that without bodies and minds being well, we can never achieve what we hope to in these sustainable development goals in our lifetime. It is not just one, but all of our sacred imperative that we must leave this place knowing that minds, bodies, and spirits of every human soul is whole, healthy, and well. Amen.
Know that we Jews use the same word shalom to say hello and goodbye. And do you know the reason why? Because we don't know whether we're coming or going. Talk about language. I find it fascinating as we reflect upon English, which is a very beautiful and religious and fine language with a huge vocabulary. There is no single word in English which can bridge the gap linguistically and humanistically between male and female without detracting from either. What is needed is not a third gender word, but a unifying one which can describe a fully mature human being who can, in a spirit of joy rather than conflict, express the essence of masculine and feminine, maternal and paternal, which personifies strength through tenderness and is capable of regarding every human being as bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. There is, however, such a word in Yiddish. The word is Mensch. It comes from the German. The highest compliment that you can give another human being is to call that individual a Mensch. The goal, it seems to me, of everything that we're doing is to try to be able to say that every person we have contact with, in our view, is to be considered a Mensch. I'm delighted that my alma mater, Columbia University, developed a great deal of Menschlichkeit over the years. When I was an undergraduate in the class of 1957, Columbia College, the undergraduate division, was a men's college. But 30 years later, my daughter Sarah, who is here, became a member of the first class of women at Columbia University, and she's been active in the Alumni Association ever since. To me, gender equality is really part of the need for diversity. God needs every human being, regardless of gender or regardless of race, religion, color, and creed, in order to fulfill his divine mission upon earth. If my service in the New York City Police Department, and I must tell you I'm very proud to be part of the most diverse police department in the world, serving the city which is the most diverse metropolis in the entire universe, if my own personal service of 53 years has taught me anything, it is that if you know only one religion, you don't know any. My own study of the Quran and the New Testament and the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita and other religious texts has only served to give me a fuller and richer appreciation of myself and of Judaism. That truth comes through in a wonderful Hindu story about the gods Brahma and Vishnu. They had an argument between them as to which was the ultimate creator, and a fight broke out. And Brahma got inside Vishnu in order to evaluate the validity of his point of view. And Vishnu did the same to Brahma. And as a result of this altered perspective, the fight was stopped, and each was willing to recognize the other as the creator. One of my favorite books is Mahatma Gandhi's All Religions Are Equal. In it, he says it is idle to speak of winning souls for God. Is God so weak that he or she cannot win souls for himself or herself? And indeed, when we are judged by the Almighty, he's not going to be interested in extraneous attributes such as our gender or our racial or religious background, but what we are, which really means what kind of things are we doing here upon earth. It seems to me that the best way to teach gender equality is through our religious faith, because religion is indispensable to life. We need religion in order to integrate ourselves into the universe and to endow our lives with spirituality. We need a source of inspiration and a way to make our lives transcendent. We need a tradition that'll carry us through the rites of passage from birth to death. We need a faith to hold on to during those bewildering moments of crisis and moral disorientation and personal anxiety. We need a stabilizing and steadying influence in our lives during those circumstances of loss, reversal, disillusionment, and despair. In short, we need God. That's why all roads lead to God. That's why theologians develop their particularistic doctrines. They assemble religious texts, and they develop customs and ceremonies. We can think in the abstract, but we have to act in the concrete. We need a specific path to walk upon that leads the way to salvation and the good life. Our religion, in our particular language, created by our ancestors, that's our favorite religion, and it's become part of the essence of our life. Our faith in which we were born or which we chose, that becomes part of who we are as human beings. And we may be born into eternity, but time and place give our life meaning. But the love and loyalty that you feel towards your own faith ought to give you an appreciation of the importance of other religions. After all, if your religion is important to you, other people's religions is important to them. That comes through in that beautiful story of a mother who brought her sons to the circus. They got separated, and the youngster called out, "Sarah, Sarah, Sarah." The mother recognized the child's voice, and they were immediately reunited. And the mother asked the child, "Why did you call me Sarah when you always call me mother?" And the youngster said, "There's lots of mothers here, but I wanted my own." Just as we love our own religions, we should understand that in viewing other religions, we shouldn't use terms that are the concept of evaluation or judgment, inferior or superior. What is needed is respect and regard and understanding and appreciation. You know, Christianity is a very beautiful religion, but it is written in John chapter 14, verse 2, that there are many rooms in my Father's house. Islam is a very beautiful and wonderful religion, but a good Muslim is taught to revere Moses, Jesus, the patriarchs, and the matriarchs. And that is why when theologians formulate their particularistic doctrines, they need to remember that the most important principle of all is that which is contained in the book of Genesis, namely, every human being is created in the image of God. You know that President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, for whom this United Nations was the capstone of all of his aspirations, was asked during World War II, what is the United States trying to achieve and all of the other allies in this conflict? And he answered, we're fighting for the verse in the book of Genesis that every human being is created in the image of God. And indeed, that fact leads ultimately to the realization that every human being has a spark of divinity. And logically, we have the responsibility to treat every human being as sacred, because just as we are holy, they are holy too. Do you know that story about a stranger who came to a local community and he asked one of the residents, were any great men or women born here? And the local said with a straight face, no, only babies. First we are born, then we acquire doctrines. First we're human, and then chance and circumstance determines what our gender is and what religion or lack of religion we will gravitate towards. I was once in the city of Jerusalem, standing next to the holy places of the religions of the Western world, and I saw an archaeologist who was examining a bone, and I asked him, what can you learn from this bone? And he said, I can determine with great accuracy the age, the sex, and the height of the individual. But one thing I cannot determine is where he prays. That depends upon the cultural context. And he looked up at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the Dome of the Rock, and the Western Wall. It all depends upon where his affections for religiosity are directed. I think we all know in our bones, whether we're men or whether we're women, Jews, Catholics, Protestant, Muslims, Buddhists, Shintoists, Taoists, or what have you, that we're all equal. Cancer, Alzheimer's disease, and a broken heart don't belong to any one religion. They are human. And when a hungry person is fed, and a homeless person is sheltered, and an injustice is righted, does it really make any difference whether that assistance comes from a man, or comes from a woman, or comes from a mosque, a cathedral, or a synagogue? Open heart surgery is not sectarian. Treating a tumor is not theological, and creating jobs is not a matter of catechism. God is a powerful driving force for healing, but we don't know how he effectuates that. And therefore, how can any denomination claim that they have a monopoly on healing? There's a wonderful story about a famous physician. I've been told to take a hint. Let me just say one more thing. The famous doctor, William Osler, was once performing surgery in an operating theater, and after he was finished, one of the medical students came up to him and said to him, Dr. Osler, you're a wonderful healer. And the doctor said, I merely dress the wound. God is the healer. Therefore, to claim exclusivity with God is an ungodly act. Ladies and gentlemen, religion is not an island unto itself. No one has a monopoly on holiness. There's no faith without humility, and we have to learn to disagree without being disagreeable. Therefore, let all of us who revere God continue to speak to one another, leading all human beings to recognize the splendor of God. Thank you.
would like to begin by greeting you with a greeting of peace. Assalamu alaikum, shalom, and may God Almighty bless all of you. Let me join all of us to congratulate the organizers, the sponsor and co-sponsors of this wonderful event tonight. And I'm very proud to be one of the co-sponsors. Nusantara Foundation is my organization. Have been working closely with the Foundation for Ethnic Understanding that you mentioned. And in fact, the president of that foundation, Rabbi Max Schneier, and myself had co-authored a book called Sons of Abraham, Issues Unite and Divide Jews and Muslims. I don't mean to promote my book, but you can go and buy it. Ladies and gentlemen, the issue that I've been assigned to me to talk tonight is about eradication of poverty. There are 3 points to underline. Number one, how should we view poverty? It reminds me first about a statement of the Prophet Muhammad, Prophet of Islam, who said once that كَادَ الْفَقْرُ أَنْ يَكُونَ كُفْرًا. Almost poverty leads into disbelief. What does it mean? Disbelief in our terminology means rebellion, means rejection of truth and God. In other words, that poverty can lead someone to reject even his own God. So we have to see it as a very dangerous enemy. That's why the Prophet Muhammad himself again said, seek refuge by God from disbelief and poverty. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-kufri wal-faqr in Arabic language. Umar, who was the third caliph of the Muslims, the third leader of the Muslim after the passing of the Prophet Muhammad, he's very famous with his statement when he said, if poverty were a man, I could have killed him, because he is our shared and common enemy. In fact, the Holy Quran reminds us that rejecting to help the poor itself is a rejection to the religion itself. That's why there is one chapter, that is the last point for this particular point that I would like to underline. There is one chapter in the Holy Quran called Al-Quraysh. Quraysh is the Arab tribes in Mecca at that time, before the Prophet was sent to Mecca. And Mecca was the center of business transaction. The Arab used to go to Yemen to do business, or went to Syria during summertime. So it is kind of a center of business transaction. But it's not the point I would like to underline here. The point I would like to mention is the last verse of that Quran. It says, الَّذِي أَطْعَمَهُم مِّن جُوعٍ وَآمَنَهُم مِّن خَوْفٍ. God mentioned connectedly between hunger and security. What does it mean? That many problems we are facing today, social problems, even terrorism, primarily caused by hunger. Because when the people are hungry, they tend to lose their common sense. They tend to lose their human sense. And that's why it's very, very important. This is the first point. The second point, why poverty? Why poverty? Despite of the lot of money have been distributed around, we are living in New York, center of capitalism, here in New York City. But why poverty? I would like to mention 3 out of many reasons. Number one, because of human greed. And when the people are greedy, they are losing their human compassion. When the people are losing their compassion, they are becoming abusive. And you can talk about environment. Why we are destroying our environment? Because of that greed. That greed. The richer are manipulating the poor. The more money being accumulated, the more poor out there. So you see, the rich are becoming richer and the poor are becoming poorer because of that human greed. Number one. Number two, because of disaster. And I would like to particularly mention about man-made disaster. War, my brothers and sisters, has caused millions of people to displace. Look at in Yemen, in Syria, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in different other places. At the same time, the rise of neo-conservatism reject those refugees to come to their countries. So this creates poverty in many countries because of man-made disasters, wars. But the last point, this is very important. This is very, very important. And I don't mean to offend. I know that some of you representing government, I'm sorry, Ambassador, I know you are representing government, but because of mismanagement. Many countries are rich, but I'm sorry to say that many still governments are corrupt. And many of those corrupt governments are collaborating with economic power in manipulating their own people and their own resources. This is the cause of poverty. This is the cause of poverty. So let me go to the last point because I've been given a sign to stop. The last point is what to do. Number one, we have to redefine our faith. What does it mean for me to be religious? What does it mean for you to be a Christian? What does it mean for you to be a Jew or Hindu or Buddhist or Muslim? It is not about how many times you pray on a daily basis. It is about how you serve your community. That's why the Prophet Muhammad reminded us, لا يؤمن من ناب شبعانا وجاره جوعان. He is not a believer, the one who is sleeping well because his stomach is full while his neighbors cannot sleep because he has nothing to eat. It's not the faith that we are believing. Number two, we need to regain the essence of faith. What is the essence of faith? It is about compassion and love. And the last one, we religious people must continually remind our government to do their job. Thank you so much.
Chaverim kol Yisroel, Chaverim, Chaverim kol Yisroel, Chaverim kol Yisroel, Chaverim, Chaverim kol Yisroel, Chaverim kol Yisroel, Chaverim, Chaverim kol Yisroel, Chaverim kol Yisroel, everybody, Chaverim kol Yisroel, Chaverim kol Yisroel, Chaverim, Chaverim kol Yisroel, Chaverim kol Yisroel, Chaverim, Chaverim kol Yisroel, Chaverim kol Yisroel, Chaverim, Chaverim kol Yisroel, Chaverim kol Yisroel, Chaverim. Not finished, not finished. Then I love him. Thank you, everybody.
And I would like to go to India with the Bliyas Under the Big Tree program. In 1999, the Fo Guangshan Institute of Buddhist Studies in India was founded to foster opportunity through education. In 2014, they started the program Under the Big Tree. And near the city of Bodh Gaya in the state of Bihar, India, we shall have a short film to show you. Gaya is one of the most important Buddhist pilgrimage sites where Buddha attained enlightenment beneath a sacred Bodhi tree. The project hosts lessons for local children and young adults, in particular girls who are often disenfranchised. The curriculums focus on the language and the reading and helps the students and the community in accessing the resource and services, providing a safe, open, and cost-free atmosphere of learning for boys and girls, advances literacy, and improves the children's well-being and their futures. In terms, They will pass on this value and what they have learned to their families and communities, extending open-mindedness and friendships to others.
Peace is what the world needs today. It is the answer for all the violence.
The dialogue is very important because there is misunderstanding, right?
No more war, no more religious division. Only love and compassion can heal the nation.
My father was a Korean Presbyterian minister. I am now converted to Judaism. My sister married into a Muslim family, and all the religions in my personal family get together, and we discovered that we're all the same and we love each other. And I believe that the world can do the same.
As Mandela said, no one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People must learn to hate. And if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite.
We need to come together as a community of faith leaders.
Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
We ask, Holy Spirit, that you breathe afresh on us. Give us creative ideas. Give us peace. Teach us how to forgive each other. Most of all, let your love be seen in us and among us.
I give you greetings of peace and harmony. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Peace be upon you all. I say prayer which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in his book, Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Rabbana atina min ladunka rahmah wa hayyi ilana min amrina rashada wa hayyi ilana min amra rashada.
慈悲喜舍遍法界，惜福结缘利人天，禅净戒恨平等忍，惭愧感恩大愿心。
Bless the good people here today with strength, courage, and wisdom, to bring people of different faiths, cultures, and religions together in our collective mission of achieving universal peace, holiness, and harmony.
Such dialogues are so important. Keeps us constantly reminding that we're all one.
Everybody cross the wall. Show some love. They'll be out of touch tomorrow. They'll be out of touch tomorrow. They'll be out of touch tomorrow. They'll be out of touch tomorrow.
It's the It's distinctly a distinguished honor for me to be sitting here in this panel, particularly as we have all distinguished people here, and Swamiji sitting next to me, which he has spoken just about everything that I thought I might be able to speak. I have participated in the previous World in Interfaith Harmony Weeks, and each time I left with a wonderful feeling that how great it is for the people of different faiths to sit in the same dais, people sitting in the audience appreciating each speaker, whatever he or she may be saying. So basically, inheritably, we all have this blood in us that we must coexist, we must work together, and we must also have that feeling of brotherly or sisterly between each other. As God has created us all equally, there is no way that we can hate each other. And I think the fact that as the world evolves, the science and the technology improve, and as Swamiji just mentioned, the younger peoples begin to realize these conflicts only hurt us, the growth. And what does that lead to? It leads to inequality among people. Today's world, inequality, although is much less, still very much in existence. And inequality in what? Inequality in wealth, in property, in your food, in just about anything in the world. There is inequality between people. Particularly income inequality is a global problem and which requires global solutions. And who can bring these global solutions? People like you and us can bring these global solutions. And in Hinduism we teach, it's really not a Hinduism, it's actually called a Sanatana Dharma, which is a universal religion. And there are no real tenets, in the sense there are no doctrines that we follow. Being good to humanity, serving poor people, helping each other, trying to evolve different problems to help in the world. All this is a part of what Hindu Dharma teaches. It is a universal Dharma. The fact that it has this kind of a notion of a Sanatana Dharma, it must say that inequalities must not even exist. But if it does, with the praise, with the grace of God, we must all be able to help each other and bring this inequality to being equal. I know in this world today, if you go back to the history, the inequalities have reduced considerably. Even the poorest of the nations are coming up far better than what they were, let's say 15, 20, or 30, 40 years ago. But I think it's the duty of all of us combined, different, whether it's interfaith or different faiths or the same faith, to help each other. And as Swamiji just mentioned, even helping poor people within your own community. I cannot sit and say I'm going to help the world. But if I can help my community, if each of us can help each our communities, I think we have collectively done a tremendous job of evolving poverty, inequality, and just about everything. Go and serve food to the poor. You feel so good. Today I have done some good deed. In Sanatana Dharma it says that it is only when you give education to somebody, this is the greatest gift that you can give because it brings livelihood for these people. If you give food for one, yes, they're also very good, but that's only a contentment for that particular day. So I think we must realize that we all have to work together, and we appreciate the fact that World Interfaith Harmony Week is being conducted, and this time it is, I'm telling you, it's unbelievable till this time. I really am enjoying every minute of it, and I wish the very best to the organizers, and hopefully look forward to meeting all of you all. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Our faith, my faith, our faith, one is faith, His faith, her faith, their faith, one is faith.
One, yes, we are one community. We sing joyous song for our world. Recites the Quran. They study the Bible. These holy books are based on. Well, you go to Varanasi, and she journeys to the Wailing Wall. They pilgrimage to Mecca. These holy sites inspire all.